Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining us and thank you for having me today. Can you see the slides well?
Perfect, Miriam.
Okay, good. Okay, so today we are going to cover several topics related with vegan children. We are going to look at what the recent research shows about vegan children's health. We are going to see how to feed children using food groups and portions. We are going to look at essential supplements needed at this age and to look at the ones that are really needed. And we are going to finish with some suggestions for common feeding challenges at this age. So in this section, the first section, what the research shows about vegan children's health is based on recent studies over the last decade, mainly in Europe. I have chosen Europe because it's more related with children in the UK and because some nutrients are related with the region because of the soil and other aspects. So we are going to see many studies from Germany and also from Poland and Austria. And they are focused on growth, health status, and dietary intake. And they compare all these aspects in vegan children with vegetarian and meat eaters. So the evidence comes from longitudinal observational studies and also from some systematic reviews. Here you have a list of the main studies from the German series. They have two groups of children in these studies, one to 3 years old, and the second one from 4 or 5 years to late adolescence. So they have covered all ages and they are publishing, they continue publishing. Many studies focus on different nutrients and different aspects of the children's health. There are also some studies like in Poland, Austria, recent one, and also some systematic reviews, and I said before. But because there are so many, we are only look at the main findings, the summary of the results. And the results from this study show very clearly that European vegan children are growing within the normal range. And their growth is comparable to the growth of non-vegetarian or non-vegan children. And they tend to be a little leaner, so more like slimmer, but height and weight are comparable in general. We also have seen from these studies that the diet pattern is closer to the recommended dietary intake. They usually eat more grains, more whole grains, more vegetables, more legumes, more nuts, and less sweets and less saturated fat. So this is a very positive finding. Some studies, however, have shown that some vegan children are consuming not enough vitamin B2, and a significant percentage of them, they don't reach daily requirements. Iodine and selenium are not in of concern in Europe in general because the soil is very poor in these nutrients, but it's affecting vegans more than other children. We know that calcium intake in European vegan children is low in many cases, and there is a high percentage of the children who are not meeting official requirements. And this can be linked, we don't know for sure, but some also findings show that these children appear to have lower bone density at the same age. We don't know the clinical consequences of this finding, but it's something that we have to monitor to look at more carefully. And also vitamin D intakes are low in all children, regardless of their diet, but it's also affecting vegan children. Vegan children have lower iron stores, but it's not affecting the hemoglobin levels, and they don't have more iron deficiency anemia compared to other children, to meat eaters or to vegetarian children. We know from these studies, from the German studies and from the Polish ones, that vegan children, even at the age of 5 to 6 years old, are showing better markers of cardiovascular health, which is a very positive finding. So based on these results, which are the nutrients we should be watching more closely, the nutrients that these studies are showing us that they may be deficient or maybe not so easy to reach. So vitamin B2, iodine and selenium, as I mentioned before, calcium and vitamin D. I'm not mentioning here vitamin B12 because most children now in Europe, including the UK, are fortified, are using fortified foods or supplements. So it's not a problem anymore, but these other nutrients can be more of concern. And if you see on this table, all these nutrients can be covered with some plant foods, and also sometimes with fortified foods, especially fortified milks, and sometimes with supplements. However, just tracking nutrients can be tiring, can be confusing, and is not very efficient in the daily life. So it's much better to focus on food groups rather than individual nutrients. Individual nutrients really is very difficult to do in our daily lives. So the next section we are going to focus now is in how to feed children using food groups and portions in a way that can be easily accessible for families. This study published in 2018 showed exactly this. So this approach, dividing the diet in different food groups and establishing the number of portions for each food group, could meet at least 90% of the requirements for most nutrients, and especially for the critical ones. So as you can see, this is divided in different age groups, and the number of portions are a little different depending on the age, of course. Don't focus or don't be too worried because, for example, here is what is a portion, how we define a portion of every food group, no? But don't be too worried about the quantity, because the quantity is not so important, because the quantity depends on the child appetite, and the child appetite depends on how fast they are growing, on how active they are, on how big or small they are, or the specific age. So more than the specific amount is the proportion between different food groups. So the important thing is that these food groups, whole grains, beans and legumes, and fortified soya milk, fruit, vegetables, and nuts and seeds should be provided, should be offered daily, every day. Vegan meat alternatives are not essential, but can be sometimes alternated with beans and legumes, especially for some children who may find this group a little more difficult, but they are not essential. As you can see here in the previous table, the minimum number is 0. So they are not essential, but can be useful in some circumstances, and we are going to look at this a little later. But just for you to see an example, what is a normal day for a 2 or a 3-year-old child? So these are normal meals, like three main meals and 2 snacks that can be common for a child of this age. And I have just mentioned all of the foods that are part of these meals. And you can see that there are grains, whole grains, that there are legumes, that there are vegetables, that there are fortified milks. And if we count all of them, we are reaching the number of foods, the number of food groups that are recommended at this age. And by reaching this, we are reaching automatically most of all the nutrients this day. Of course, not all the children eat the same every day, and that is not important. Again, it's not important. What is important is the consistency and is the long term. But this is a normal sample of for this age. We have another here for the next age group, 4 to 8 years. And again, so these are common foods. There are fruit, there are vegetables that children usually like, fortified milks and yogurt, and whole bread and oat bars and all these kind of things. And again, if we count the portions and we count the groups, the food groups, we can see at the end of the day that the child has eaten all of them. Again, the quantity is not so important because some children are going to eat more or less, and we need to feed our children depending exclusively on their appetite. We shouldn't force a child on, or if a child is hungry, we should offer them more. But the important thing is the distribution, that there are enough of each food group. And finally, for the next age group, again, another sample from breakfast to dinner. Again, not all children are going to need all the snacks, but some do, and it's important to offer them, like we can use snacks to offer more food groups, especially nuts and seeds and fortified milks. And again, if we take all of them together, we can see that with simple normal meals, everyday meals, we can reach all the food groups. I'm insisting a lot on fortified milks because it's an essential group food for kids, for children of all ages. And we know that plant-based milks are very different according to the nutritional profile. It's not the same soya milk compared to coconut milk. Here you have a table showing the main nutrients. The most important thing from this table is that soya milk and pea milk are the most nutritious ones and are the ones that are the essential for children, really essential for them. They can be used from 1 year of age, and they are pretty, it's not that I think that it was, but it's the best replacement for cow's milk because they are similar in calories, very similar in amount of protein, less fat and less saturated fat. And we are going to see now that especially soya milk, how nutritious it is for children. So here you can see the nutrients that only just one glass of soya milk is providing and how in this second column it can cover the nutritional requirements of a 5-year-old child. So you look at the percentages, this is fortified, calcium fortified, but if you look at the percentages, you can see that many nutrients, more nutrients are covered in a significant and a very high percentage. So just by providing this, we are covering a lot of these nutrients in a very easy to have to eat food. So it's important to remember that this is an important food group for children of all ages. So should be present every day. And in relation with this, I know that most of you have heard about the recent report from the Committee of Nutrition about, they call them plant drinks, but well, we use this as milk. So, and the conclusion of this report of this group of experts is in children from 1 to 5 years, if they don't want to, for whatever reason, they are not drinking cow's milk, unsweetened fortified soya milk is the preferred alternative. They say fortified as much as possible with all these vitamins, but essentially with calcium. Calcium is the main nutrient because the other nutrients can be provided by other foods, but calcium fortified is essential in this case. They also say that unfortified or sweetened plant milks are not acceptable at this age. And they also advise that there is no need for a special follow-on or growing up milks for toddlers at this age. But we are going to look at this in more detail later as well. They also said that for children older than 5 years and the rest of the population, unsweetened and fortified versions of the other milks are considered acceptable alternatives to cow's milk. So this is pretty much what we already knew according to the nutritional profiles and the role they are playing in vegan diets, but it's good to have a confirmation from an official source. We are going to look now at essential supplements that should be part of a vegan diet in childhood. So regardless of the quality of the diet, these nutrients should be offered as supplements in all cases. Vitamin B12, I know you know. So even if fortified foods are used, it's advisable to have at least once a week or twice a week, depending on the amount of fortified foods with B12 the child is eating, but at least one additional source in the form of a supplement. Vitamin D is essential for all children in the UK, at least during the winter, and this is a recommendation also from the NHS. And then some children, depending on how much time they spend outdoors and how is their skin, because not all children, not all people can absorb vitamin D from the skin in the same, it depends on how dark or how light skin is. So that has to be assessed individually. Some children may benefit from vitamin D supplementation during the rest of the year, but for sure during the winter is essential for everyone. Iodine is important in the UK because the soil here is very poor in iodine and there are no sources. So even if unless fortified milks with iodine are used consistently, I would recommend to use a supplement, even if it's just to complement that or to provide all the amount. And DHA, which is an omega-3 fatty acid, is not mandatory. Really, we don't really know So you don't take it, you are not going to have a deficiency. There is no deficiency of this nutrient reported, but can be beneficial. There is a plant-based alternative. So in my opinion, it's recommended because the potential benefits are there. So on this table, you have the amounts, again, depending on the group age. And what about multivitamins? Can be useful. In general, they are not necessary. You know that the NHS recommends for all kids from 6 months to 5 years to have a reliable source or like a supplement providing vitamin D and now also the vitamin A, but not vitamin C anymore. But in some cases and for short periods of time, for example, very selective eaters, picky eaters that are refusing major groups for very long periods and are very worrying for parents can be useful for short periods of time, or if the child is not growing well and we have some concerns and during the child is getting some tests or whatever, or especially if there is limited access to fortified foods, especially fortified plant milks, that would be a reason to fortify with to add multivitamin supplements, or if the child is recovering from illness or surgery or has increased needs for other reasons and should be assessed individually. I will look that the multivitamin has, of course, vitamin B12 and vitamin B2, vitamin D, important as well. As we mentioned before, iodine, selenium, and zinc. Zinc is important if the child is not growing well. Even if most vegetarian and vegan children have enough zinc in their diet, for a child who has poor appetite, I will add zinc. And look for vitamin A, especially if there is low intake of some veggies like sweet potato, carrots, pumpkin, and red pepper, because these are the main sources and can be deficient. These children can be deficient in vitamin A if they are not eating these veggies regularly. Iron, I will only advise iron if you have a blood test showing very low iron stores, or it's because very increased demands. But most children don't need iron really, but it can be considered individually. And of course, DHA that usually gets in a separate form. There are many multivitamins. The one from the Vegan Society, I think, is very, very useful because it's specifically designed for vegans in the UK. So it covers the nutrients that are more difficult to get in this country and with our provision of foods. So they have 2 versions for older children and adults in the forms of tablets. And also for baby and toddlers, there is a liquid multivitamin that provides as well vitamin C and vitamin D and A as recommended by the NHS, and also the other ones like B12 and selenium and iodine. So I think it's very reassuring to have this, especially so in all babies and toddlers for every day. And then even in older children, when they are not growing well, they are growing very fast and they are not eating enough for short periods of time, can be very useful. And then we are going to see some suggestions for common feeding challenges that are very, very common in childhood. So it's something that we, people and professionals, we are treating children, we are dealing with children, can see almost every day. And they are not affecting only vegan children, but the whole childhood population. So the first concern is my child not growing well? What should I do? So the first thing, because many parents worry about this, and the first thing is just to confirm that this is the case. You can use the growing charts from the Royal College of Pediatrics that you can find on this website. There is one for boys and one for girls. So you need to plot the weight and the height. And more important than was single measurements, just to look at the trend and look at the relationship between the height and the weight to see if this is proportionate. It's okay that if the child is thin, if it's slim, because this is not a problem, if it's within the normal range. And also it's important to look at the family background because some children are genetically small, so they are not going to be big, no matter how we feed them. So that is important to establish. So it's good to look at the trend, how the child is growing over time, rather than one particular measurement. But if the child is not growing well, that we see that the growth is not progressing at the same pace, it's important to ask our GP or our pediatrician and have a health check and see if there is something wrong, because not only in vegan children, every child may have an underlying medical reason for this. So it's important to rule out any underlying medical causes, and then if everything is okay, it's good, it's advisable to review the diet with a pediatric plant-based dietitian just to see if something can be optimized, if the diet can be made more nutrient dense, because children have their energy requirements are very high, and sometimes it's difficult to give them all the calories they need in a reduced volume. So, but there are strategies to do that. For example, these are some strategies to give children more calories in small volumes. So the main one is to add more nut butters, because nuts are very high in calories, in fats, and in proteins. So this is a very, very good food for kids of all ages. So should be included every day. But if the child is not growing according with the expectations with the family background and the previous growth, the main thing to add is starting to add more nut butters and seeds and avocado and all other high fat foods. Make sure that you are using fortified soya milks instead of other milks, because it's high in protein and calories and in many other nutrients that we have seen before. So make sure that you are using fortified soya milk, and if possible, increase the amount if the child tolerates it well and likes it. Include nutritional yeast, because it's very easy. Most children like it. It provides a lot of nutrients. Half of the weight is protein, and they have a lot of B vitamins, and many of them are fortified with zinc, which is a very important nutrient for growth. So use one of these if possible. In some children, especially the ones who find difficult to have enough amount of legumes, you can replace part of them with good quality vegan meat alternatives like vegan burgers or something like this that the child likes, because they are usually more concentrated in calories and protein. They are easier to eat at some ages and for some children, and by some children, some can be useful in these cases. Another good advice can be like added more chopped like dried fruits like dates, apricots, and figs to porridge and yogurt and smoothies, because again, they have a lot of calories in a small volume. Remember to avoid a lot of drinks before meals, because children have still small stomachs, so they are not going to deal with a high amount of food. And just in this case, I know this is a little against the recommendation from the Committee of Nutrition, but in some cases, especially in toddlers or young children, if they don't like much for normal fortified and sweetened soya milk, for short periods of time, these growing up plant milks, they get a little sweetened, not a lot, but some sugar, they provide some sugar, so they are more tasteful for them, they are more pleasant. So for a short period of time, and they provide more calories, and also they are fortified with iron and iodine as well, so can be useful for short periods of time. Also, when you are transition from formula milk, because formula milk is more sweet, so in order to transition to normal fortified and sweetened soya milk, these milks can be useful. Another very common problem does not affect vegan children alone. In my experience, affects vegan children in less proportion, in less percentage, but some vegan children can have this, especially between the ages of 2 years and 6 years. It's very common. So important thing to remember is a stage, it's a just developmental stage. It's going to pass. So don't worry too much. Don't force the child. Don't make a fuss about it. Continue expose the child to an offer in family meals, but don't force them to eat them. And most children like things like tomato sauce and sweet potato, rice, something like this that you can use. And most children, even if they don't like veggies too much, most of them like the fruit. So you can increase the amount of fruit that you offer to your child if they are not liking vegetables very much. But if the child consistently avoids this group of vegetables, the orange ones like carrots and pumpkin and sweet potato, I will consider a multivitamin in this case, just to cover vitamin A. Here you see how, for example, the main nutrients provided for the vegetables are vitamin A, C, folate, vitamin K, and of course, a lot of fiber and antioxidants. So you can see some fruit alternatives that can replace the main vegetables. And many children like them. So try to increase this group of fruit for them and continue offering the others until the child really likes them. And remember that things like raw carrots and raw red pepper, these kind of things most children like and they count. So even if the child is not going to eat a lot of broccoli, don't worry, give them what they like and it will be good. So what are the main message from this talk, from this so remember that the evidence on vegan children is reassuring. It's very reassuring. The children are growing well, are meeting their nutrient needs when diets are well planned, but this can be applied to any diet, really. And we have seen also from the German studies that non-vegan children, they also have their own challenges. They are not eating enough fiber, they are not eating enough vegetables and fruit and some antioxidants. So the challenges are a little different depending on the diet, but overall, vegan children are meeting their nutrient needs. Remember that it's not effective and you can get too obsessed and too worried just focusing on specific nutrients, and it's really difficult to track them on a daily basis. So focus on food groups. If the diet today is included whole grains and legumes and fruit and veggies and nuts and seeds and fortified milks, if this included them, it's going to be okay. And the nutrients will follow that. Remember to use, no matter how good the diet is, remember to use essential supplements, the ones we have seen, vitamin B12, D, iodine, and DHA as recommended before. For children with this kind of more challenges or in general for all, include fortified plant milks daily. And also for children who need more, remember the power of nuts and seeds. They are very high in calories and nutrients, so use them because the volume is very small. So with just 1 tablespoon, you are giving them a lot of calories and nutrients. And use dry fruit, vegan meat alternatives if the child prefers, and of course the plant milks. And just how can we check that the child is well fed, is well nourished? Because the child is growing well, the child looks healthy, is active, is happy, like with any other child. So a child that is not eating well, we are going to see that it's a child that is getting sick more often than the other children. That is a child that doesn't have enough energy. It's a child that it's going to show other problems. But a child that is growing according to the expectations for their family background, their previous growth, that is active, that is happy, that has normal academic achievement, is going to be, we can be sure that is well fed. Remember also, if there is any problem, just ask for advice. There are many more now, plant-based dietitians. They know a lot about, they can give you a lot of advice, and sometimes just even minor things can solve the problem, things that we haven't thought about. And remember to be patient when there are some, when the child doesn't like veggies or doesn't like this, or are very focused on one food group, because in the long term, they are going to learn how to enjoy all foods. Just to remind you also that on our website, we have a specific section for children, for kids, with a lot of information. So this is the main page, and we have all these sections covering supplements, probiotics, and common questions and ideas for meals. For example, we have fact sheets for specific age groups, so showing in a very condensed way the main points that you have to remember. We also have ideas for meals and for snacks for toddlers and young children. We have useful books. So we have a lot of resources, and yes, please go and check, because you can find a lot of useful information there. And that's all. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm super happy to take all the questions that you may have.
That was amazing, Miriam. Thank you so much. And such a good overview of a complex and controversial topic that clearly shouldn't be controversial because the data is really sound in this area, and it's really, really great to see that and see that it's so reassuring. So we know that here in the UK, 27% of children, according to the latest statistics, are living with overweight or obesity, and these are so many complex reasons, including the social determinants of health and the fact that accessing healthy food can be really challenging. Often we are not used to seeing children on the leaner side. When you see children, vegan children, and if they do look quite lean and that invites concern from others, despite the fact that they may be growing healthily, what would you say as a pediatrician? Do you see this? Do you see parents of
Yes.
plant-based eaters saying, oh, you're used to seeing sort of really chubby, cherubic like infants and toddlers? Is there something that we can do to reassure parents of healthy plant-based eaters?
Yeah, we can show them the growth chart and say that it's normal, especially and telling this message is important, that the normal, what we call the normal population, is not normal anymore, probably is on the other side. And that being lean, if the child is active, it's not only normal, but it's optimal. And what we usually see in vegan children is that they are growing well, but they are leaner, which is very good. But we can see that they are well nourished, that they have very good like muscle growth and everything. So that is important. You distinguish between growing well and growing too much, like in gaining weight. And as you said, it's so common now to see these chubby children at all ages, and this is what is considered normal, that a vegan child or a child that is more in the normal shape can be perceived as too lean, too thin, but we need to have this message very clear and reassure parents and other professionals. Yeah.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So someone did mention that, I feel that this support is suitable for families that are more well off and they can afford some of the ingredients that can be quite costly. Clearly, things like nut butters or even nutritional yeast, the price has gone up of some of these more niche ingredients. Although things like fortified plant milk, I know that supermarket owned brands like Aldi's, I think 59 pence.
Yes, yeah.
It's fortified, the supermarket owned brands are, especially you must get the non-organic versions. Organic is not fortified, but they're often fortified with calcium. But do you have any other tips for those who want to follow a vegan diet, but the family is on a budget?
Yeah, as you said, use brands from supermarkets that are fortified, that are much, much cheaper, and they are it's very good and offer the same nutrition. Focus as much as possible in normal legumes and whole grains, because usually when you buy them like more in bulk, they are cheaper. Can be a problem for some children, I agree, if they prefer some other foods. But if the main meals are based on whole grains and legumes, it's not so expensive to include from time to time any of these other. And peanut butter is very cheap. Peanut butter is so cheap that is one of the main foods that is when it's used for malnourished children in low-income countries. So if you cannot afford any nut butter, peanut butter is going to be fine. And peanut butter is super nutritious and it's quite cheap. So that is so instead of so much nut butter, just replace with peanut butter, for example. That could be another.
That's great advice. And I think remembering that, there are the same tips that we would give for families, it's applicable to children, more home cooking, batch cooking, places like eBay and online where you can buy pressure cookers secondhand, really cheap. There's lots of, even in charity shops, sometimes you can find those items, and clearly some vegan meats can be quite expensive, but there are some, even things like Linda McCartney sausages, these sorts of things in the freezer section that can be really
Yes.
quite cheap. So it's kind of looking around, and I guess it will take a bit more planning. But frozen fruits and vegetables, what are your views on that? Would you
They
recommend?
are perfect. They are very good. And they are the same nutrition, or sometimes even more. Some research has shown that the content of vitamins can be even higher. So can be perfect for yogurts, for smoothies, or just to, yeah. So, and sometimes they are in offer. So they are like like they are cheaper than usual. So if you have the space, just buy more of them when they are cheaper, and you can have them for months. So of course.
Great advice. And yeah, I completely agree. The supermarket versions, even chia seeds and Asda and Aldi, they can actually be really cheap. But obviously, if you buy
Mm,
a branded version or you go to a health food store, it can be very expensive.
yeah.
It's all about sometimes hunting around, but it's definitely not as easy as we all want it to be more accessible to eat healthily. And in the chat, I'm posting a link to a great fact sheet from plant-based health professionals, plant-based on a budget, which has really simple tips, again, very child friendly. And this can be accessed by going to our website and typing in plant-based health professionals uk.uk/fact sheets, and it's a plant-based on a budget fact sheet. So hopefully that helps. Okay, we have a lot of questions coming in, so let's try and whiz through them. Is it dangerous to give supplements if they're not needed and maybe it's being met by the diet, or will the child's body just disregard those if they've already absorbed what the body needs from the diet?
So some vitamins can be dangerous, especially vitamin D and vitamin A. If they are taken in high amounts, they should have taken in very high amounts to be really dangerous. But so if you just keep the dose recommended by the manufacturer, it's not going to be a problem. As a general rule, it's better not to use supplements if the child really doesn't need it. But for a short period of time, it's okay, especially if for some parents can be reassuring to have the child on these supplements when the child is a little more picky, eater or something, be okay. But be careful with the amount of vitamin D and A, because they can be dangerous. The others, the group of B vitamins are usually we don't have problems with them.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And you have a whole supplement section on our website. Obviously, that's not individual or medical advice, but there's more helpful detail in that, and a breakdown. And do you have any tips for people where their child might be rejecting certain supplements, especially children who may have sensory preferences and don't like the taste or swallowing a certain supplement or pill? What would you recommend in those situations?
Just try different formats, because now we have like drops, like liquid forms, and other the child can chew, or some of them can be just crushed and mixed with some food, and the child is not going to notice anything. It's just find a way. Fortunately, we have a very wide range of supplements now in the UK, so we can find. It's just find the one that the child is going to tolerate or accept better.
Yeah, even liquid droppers and
Yeah, liquid are a lot. So yeah, and sometimes it's even one drop. So you can just add one drop to any food, to any meal, and that's fine.
so helpful. So someone says they're going on holiday for 2 weeks. They're worried that they're not going to find fortified soy milk for their son. And this can be the case. Sometimes you're traveling in small towns, especially in Europe and other places. Can we rely on supplements only during that time in case we don't get hold of fortified plant milk or yogurt? What would you suggest doing in this situation?
Don't worry, if it's 2 weeks, nothing is going to happen. We know that for calcium, what is important is the long term.
Mhm.
So you are not going, or the child is not going to have a problem because it's not reaching calcium recommendations for 2 weeks. It's not going to be a problem. So if they want to use supplements, it's fine. But just if it's a trip, it's holidays, just enjoy holidays. And the important thing that is consistently during the year, fortified plant mix are consistently used, because we know that this consistent use was what makes the bones healthy. So that is the important thing. 2 weeks, they don't count.
And if otherwise, if they are, only having access to organic plant milk in some parts of the world, then calcium, you can get calcium powder, you can get a sort of a calcium carbonate powder that you can stir.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. For people who are living permanently on these areas, there are other ways to fortify their own milks. For example, they can use calcium powder, which is easy to just dissolve in the milk on the yogurt and can be very useful, or just use other strategies. I was like thinking for a short period of time, it's better not to worry. But if the family doesn't have access to fortified plant milks, yes, they have to look for an alternative way to fortify their milks or to use a supplement.
That's great
Yes.
advice, thank you. So if someone has said, I've heard we need to pair foods to help uptake of nutrients. So for example, to boost the uptake of plant-based iron or non-heme iron, we should pair it with vitamin C. So you might put some lemon juice on your lentils or beans. What is this the case, and what else should we be aware of in terms of pairing to aid absorption of key nutrients?
The same as I said before, don't worry about the nutrients, because if you are using different food groups in each meal, this is going to happen naturally. Because if you are including fruit and vegetables in most of the meals, they are going to be paired with iron-rich foods. Maybe not in 100% of them, but in most of them. So instead of thinking, oh, I need to add a vitamin C source because we have iron here, because then you are living in a lab, and we are not living in labs. We are living in kitchens. We are living in normal life. But you have at home, you don't have iron and you don't have vitamin C. You have fruit, you have veggies, you have lentils, you have everything. So just make normal meals, because children and adults, we need fruit and veggies in most of our meals. So when that happens, vitamin C is already included.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, don't worry about pairing, because pairing is something that happens naturally, it's organically. And also we know that looking at the iron stores in vegan children, even if they are lower because they are using the iron to grow, but they don't have more anemia, they don't have more iron deficiency. They are probably absorbing all the iron they need, but not more, which is good in the long term, because we know that higher iron stores are not good for our health. So that is probably a good thing. So the child is absorbing, most children are absorbing the iron they need, and they stop. And we also know that in long-term vegans, iron absorption improves with time. There are a recent study in adults, not in children, but probably it's the same in children, or even better in children, because children absorb better everything. So, and they show that the rate of absorption of non-heme iron is higher in vegans compared to non-vegans.
Super
And
helpful.
and we are seeing the results. So vegan children don't have problems with iron.
Great to know. And in one of the earlier slides, you mentioned that they did see in some lower bone density in some vegan children, and I know you attribute that to probably the fact that there are vegan children who are not meeting the calcium recommendations, or drinking fortified plant milks, or getting maybe calcium set tofu. Are there strategies that could help support that alongside nutrition? For example, in adults, I know that we recommend strength training, for adults to help with bone density. Are there other lifestyle practices that you would suggest? Of course, getting enough calcium intake is number one, but is there anything else you would suggest?
We don't know really, because there are few studies on children about this. We know that physical activity is basic for children. So regardless of bone health, all children need to move. They need to play, they need to do sport they like. So they need to be active. That is like another nutrient for them. And we know that children can do like weight exercise from the very early age, from the age of 4 or 5. If it's doing in a playful way and it's doing according to their age and their capacity, they can. So they are, and it's going to probably to be beneficial. So we have seen that the children have better muscle growth and probably better bone mass in the long term. But there are not studies specifically on vegan children doing this kind of training and compared to, so we don't know, but because it's so beneficial for everyone, the question is, yes, do it. Yeah, so children must be active. They should play and do sports. as much as possible. They should spend time outdoors in nature. They should be exposed to and have vitamin D because it's important for calcium absorption. And also they should meet the calcium requirements. That is important because we know that in the long term, it's a major factor for bone health and for bone density.
And kind of following on from that, someone said, how confident are we that the additional vitamins in fortified milk are free from harm in 20 years' time, it turns out that the process contains some unforeseen harm. How are these vitamins made? Is it safe? Is it ethical? And what is your view as a pediatrician on this?
So vitamins are vitamins, no matter where they are coming from. So the chemical structure is the same and they act in the body the same. So you are deficient in vitamin C and they give you a pill with vitamin C, they are going to cure your deficiency. That is for all vitamins. So that is not a problem because the nutrient, when it's identified and is created in labs or wherever, is going to work exactly the same. Additives, of course, we should be using the minimum amount. It's true that some fortified plant milks or plant milks have a little amount of them. Sometimes it's impossible to avoid them as completely, but it's difficult to think, in my opinion, that these small amounts are going to cause harm because there are a lot of studies and they go through a lot of studies before they are allowed to be used by the industry. So of course, we don't know what is going to happen. What we are going to know in 20 years. Some things can change, but from the knowledge we have now, and I don't think this is going to change dramatically, I don't think this is a problem.
I have two really big questions next. So the next one is, I know there's so many because I think everyone's really thought about it, and I love the questions. Is there any evidence of increased food allergens in children or adults who grew up vegan or veggie? Do we have the data on this? And they were not exposed to certain allergens early in life, for example, fish, or should exposure to these foods be considered when weaning if the parents find it morally acceptable? For example, maybe they're not ethical vegans. And what is the evidence of that? Someone has said, they recall something. I haven't come across the study personally, but they recall a study about Europeans having higher prevalence of nut allergies than those in Asia because children are not exposed to nuts as frequently as they are in Asia. Is this true for foods like cow's milk, eggs, shellfish, if we raise our children vegan and they're not exposed to such foods?
Yes, in theory it's possible. We don't have long-term data. We have data for nuts, and this is completely true. We know that the earlier the exposure to peanut and other nuts, we are reducing the frequency of exposure of allergies. We don't know for eggs and other animal products, and it's difficult to give an advice on this. My personal advice is that the child should be exposed and tested for allergy if he or she is going to be exposed to this food regularly. For example, if he's going to attend, or the rest of the family is eating eggs, they are eating eggs, and the child is going to be in contact with them, even if the parents and the child. So probably it's important to test that the child is not allergic to egg and to other foods as well. So if the food is eaten in the immediate environment of the child, it's probably good to test. But how do we make the child not allergic? Because for exposure, we don't know, for example, how many times we need to expose the child to the same food to create a tolerance. So you may expose the child to, for example, fish for 2 months during the weaning process and then no more because the family doesn't eat fish. And then the child may develop an allergy years or even decades later. So we don't have data on that. So if the child is in a vegan family that consistently are not eating these foods, I wouldn't really bother because we cannot predict or we cannot just control everything. And the exposure should be like regular in order to work. So for me, the main one is eggs. So if there is a possibility that, for example, the child is going to a nursery daycare where there is a lot of eggs around and the child may be in contact with them, probably it's good to test. if the child is
Really,
allergic.
really good advice. And I think if there's a family history of allergens, like your
Yes,
parents has food allergies, if there's that
yes,
maybe eczema and other allergy
yes,
symptoms, then it might be good. But as you said, there's a whole ladder. So it's not allergen cannot just be given once. It needs repeated exposure.
yes,
That's such a complicated decision, but probably a discussion with a pediatric dietitian and maybe an allergy specialist would be something that's
yes,
advisable rather than it's a complicated topic, isn't it?
yes,
And
yes.
it's not easy, but that's hopefully that gives people some.
Yes, and also allergies are not only related with exposure to certain foods. Allergies are more prevalent now, especially in Western countries, because not so much contact with nature, with natural, like the soil, the things that are working in our gut microbiome to prevent allergies. It's not only exposure to foods, it's the whole lifestyle. That is why I was saying before, children should spend time outdoors, should be in contact with the natural environment, because we are protecting them so much that they don't have the opportunity to contact different allergens and create their own immunity. So a healthy immune system is the system, is an immune system that is going to react only to proper allergens, not to everything. And this is not only about food, it's all the whole lifestyle. So as much as possible, just have your kids outdoors, nature, not just like go to the beach, the forest. Yeah, spend time with your children in nature. That is going to help a lot.
Thank
And we
you.
have evidence of that. Contact with animals, for example, because this prevents allergy, prevents eczema, prevents asthma as well. So all these kind of diseases are very related with this unnatural life we are living now.
Mm. Someone's asked about plant-based diets and making it appealing for teenage children. I just want to quickly say I would look at the book Nourish by Brenda Davis. She's got a very good chapter on plant-based foods for teenage children and for, active teenagers. That's very helpful. And all of the advice that Miriam has given is also can be extrapolated a bit. Obviously, teenagers are another intense developmental phase. So do go and check out Nourish, and there's some that's a very good book by Reshma Shah and Brenda Davis, and they've done some podcasts as well. There's one big question I do want to answer. I'm also launching a short survey to get everyone's feedback, so I'd be really grateful if you could just take 1 second to complete that. But the question is, and it's caused some debate in the Q&A section, aren't vegan meat alternatives unhealthy? They are mostly ultra processed and they're full of saturated fats. Ultra processed food has been in the news and making headlines a lot. We know 60% of the UK diet approximately consists of UPFs. What are your views on the nuance around these foods when it comes to vegan children in particular?
Yes, yes. Ultra processed foods is a so wide group that we can talk about it like as a group. Depends on so many things. And just to define something as processed or ultra processed doesn't mean much nowadays. So we need to look at every specific food. We need to look at the list of ingredients and the nutrition profile. It's true that some of these meat alternatives have a lot of saturated fat and salt and some sugar, but others are quite good. I'm not advising to eat them on a daily basis, but just like in small portions for sometimes can be good if they are if you choose or they choose the good ones. And even if the ultra processed foods are not the best option for our daily diet, we have to remember that studies show that plant-based meats are much better than the animal ones. So even if they are not ideal, we are still eating, and in some cases are good. I mean, they are needed by some children, and they can be enjoyed by anyone. They shouldn't be the base of the diet, but just check the labels, because some of them are quite good. And also by selecting the good ones, we are telling the industry that we want better alternatives.
100%. And I think tofu, tempeh, beans, lentils, those can be a mainstay, and things like TVP can be added in and things like
Yes.
that as well. But I've just posted a link, and if you go onto Plant-Based Health Professionals UK and you look up plant-based meat alternatives. There's an excellent article on our website comparing the different options and looking at some ingredients that you might want to look at. So you might wish to not choose options that are really high in coconut oil, which is higher in saturated fat, especially if you're, enjoying this as the whole family. There are definitely better for you options, and even Beyond Meat in the US has now taken out the coconut oil from its new formulation. So there's a lot of positive changes happening in the industry. It's not as simple as it's ultra processed and it's bad, because these foods can be paired along some peas, some sweet potatoes. It can be part of a really wholesome meal. And I think if you're packing a lunch, it'd be a lot harder to serve a bean curry in a lunchbox, but some vegan sausages would be really easy to pop in there as a snack. So
Exactly.
it's about the context. You're going to a party or a barbecue, you're not probably going to be eating a bowl of dal. So
No.
it's going to be, yeah, you've got to, or a lentil soup. So, you've got to contextualize and understand
Yes.
that each of these products also are different. They have different ingredients. There are lots of things now. You can get tofu-based sausages. You can get burgers made with beetroot and with pulses and with some soya protein, or pea protein. So yeah, please do check out that article, because it's a great resource. And remember that just try and look beyond the headlines as well. There's a lot of fear mongering, and a lot of it is attacking the plant-based food industry, but it's not that clear cut. So, and I had two more small questions that we can just whiz through them. One of them is, how could you encourage a child with autism to eat more plant-based? This is obviously a very complex sort of question, and it's not something we can answer quickly, but are there any resources, or would you suggest personalized guidance in this situation?
Yeah, personal guidance, because every child with this, like, uh, in general, neurodivergent people, they have their unique needs and the unique approaches, and it's very difficult to give a general answer to this. But with proper guidance, a lot can be can be facilitated, and also in this cases use supplements as much as needed until the child or the young person can have a proper nutrition. And in some cases, it's going to be difficult to achieve in long term. Yeah, but the children with even with supplements, they can grow well, they can be healthy, even if it's so. They need more help, they need more medical support and more medical tests and things. But for some of them, it's quite challenging just to have something that is not, for example, nothing that is not brown, that is not, or different textures. They really struggle. So, and they just can't. So they can't. So it's nothing that you can really do. So the strategy is to look at the diet, the things that they can tolerate, and try to compensate with other foods as much as possible, or with supplements, and should be doing in a personalized way.
Yeah, thank you. We have a directory on our website which has a list of pediatric dietitians, and Dr. Miriam also sees clients one-to-one as well, and outside of all of the busy work she does. So yeah, do go and check out that directory. And I think also this is where ultra processed foods can also be handy, because not just for neurodivergent individuals, but children in general sometimes don't like unpredictability. So the consistency of taking out a frozen vegan sausage or from a pack of tofu, it can be a lot more consistent than the irregularity of fruits and vegetables. So it's all about nuance and context with this.
Yes.
And as someone has said, yes, one caution with meat alternatives, they can sometimes contain eggs. So always, yeah, read the label. Sometimes there's milk protein, eggs, or other allergens in there. And the final question is, health visitors, nursery and school staff all need this education to support vegan children. What can we do about this? Because sometimes it's like, when you talk to someone who doesn't understand this, they do think that maybe you're harming your child, or you're not supporting them with a healthful lifestyle. What is your advice and any resources you can point to, Miriam?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. This is a difficult one, because again, it depends on the specific circumstances. So sometimes people are they are really worried because they don't know, and then you can have a conversation with them and tell them. For example, sometimes I recommend to families who come with this concern. I said, don't try to go into a very detailed conversations with other people if they don't understand. Just tell them that you are well supported by professionals that know about this, that your child is well monitored and everything is going well, that you are grateful for their concern. So you are not dismissing their concern, but that they shouldn't worry because you are advised by some professional people who know about this. What about schools and nurseries? And I think we should try to reach more them, like in terms of more talks and more, because they are completely lost. And not only about plant-based nutrition, they don't know anything about nutrition. And lately I have been giving some talks in schools in London, and the level of parents, even in very level, very good educational level, about nutrition, about the teachers at school, they are completely confused about all these things about carbohydrates, about they are trying to restrict carbohydrates for their children because they are listening to all these things about carbs. It's crazy. So yeah, there's a lot of misinformation there.
And about soya as well. We just had a question about that. There's a whole fact sheet on soya on our website. Soya is
Yeah.
safe. Only 0.3% of European children have an allergy to soya. Soya is wonderful, is a wonderful, healthful food. Obviously, we're talking more about the minimally processed soya foods,
Yeah.
edamame, tofu, tempeh, soy yogurt.
It's amazingly nutritious. Yes, it's
So delicious, and we and delicious, nutritious, very versatile, and accessible as well. So please do go and check out all the information on our website about that, plantbasedhealthprofessionals.uk/kids. And Miriam has done a fantastic job of putting together free fact sheets for vegan pregnancy and beyond. So please do share this widely. It really helps support us, and do consider joining us as a member as well. Thank you so much, Miriam. This has been an incredible talk. I know everyone's enjoyed it. I absolutely bombarded you with questions because they were just such great questions, and you did such a good job of answering everything. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it. Do join us for future webinars and spread the word. And this recording will be up on YouTube in 3 months' time as well, so you can share it more widely then. And it's available for our members for the next few months. Thanks, everyone, and good night.